A lot of you will have likely watched that 6-hour action button review for Boku no Natsuyasumi from a few years ago. I certainly did, and I was fascinated with what I saw. A solemn, nuanced, and very vibesy adventure game in which you play a little lad who is spending his summer holiday in a small village in rural Japan. I was transfixed by the whole atmosphere of that game, and more importantly, how unburdened by the poison of conventional game design it was. This was an artifact, of course, a retro game by any measure, but also an experience that, on paper at least, felt far from archaic. A game made all the more enticing by the fact that it had this huge barrier to entry and that it was never formally localized. Tim Rogers' multilingual background allowed us all a glimpse into this experience through his very specific cultural lens, a fascinating video essay, sure, but it's hard not to get a serious sense of FOMO from having to watch something being played rather than playing it yourself. The distinction is quite important. Worn down by the sheer volume of things that games expect of you now, and craving something that dug deep into the heart of that fundamental joy of play, I found myself thinking about this summer vacation a lot, and thanks to the hard work of dedicated fans, its far more approachable sequel. First released in 2002, Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 was for the longest time a Japanese language-only experience. Never formally translated, it felt like a bit of a white whale, this inviting, elegiac, secret masterpiece that sat just a little too far out of reach for people like me who, let's face it, were too lazy to put the effort into doing the whole playing along with a transcript thing that most people had to manage with for decades. In November 2023, Hilltop Works released an English language patch for the game, a miracle of sorts that finally made the process of playing this cult classic not only viable, but also pleasant. It just works. In the intervening months, like-minded folks have flocked to this particular way of playing the game, one day at a time in the month of August. Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 takes place over the 31 days of the month of August of 1975, and a lot can happen in a single day. Sometimes you need the breathing room to properly take it all in. So I thought I'd join our chipper young chap on his hollybobs, jotting down my thoughts as I play, and the result being a diary which, well, is here for you to enjoy right now. Due to the nature of how I'm producing this video diary, it won't necessarily have the usual static canvas sheen. There's simply too much to cover and too little time to get it prepped to publish the day that September rolls around, so please note that each diary entry is a single draft, written within an hour of playing that given day in-game. Without further ado, let's get stuck into our summer vacation. I'm going into this game completely blind. I have no idea really what it's about other than chilling with your family in the countryside, and as far as first impressions go, bloody hell this game is gorgeous. From that opening cutscene on the boat, the super stylized character designs juxtaposed against these pristine, bright, colourful portraits of rural Japan, it's delicious is what it is. You start out with basic introductions, but you are halfway through the day already. Dinner's pending and you've been told not to go out and about just yet. So in lieu of that, it's a spot of gentle pottering about this luscious guest house, sprawling and packed with intricate details. This is what I love about games, when they do all this bitty detritus, the evidence of lives lived in a digital space. I miss pre-rendered backgrounds. I know there is some incredible work being done in 3D spaces all the time, but there's a certain kind of magic that comes from how artists trick the brain into believing that the flat, two-dimensional entity before them is somehow a real, tangible thing that you have to maneuver around. Static imagery brought to life by the most modest of animations, steam venting, curtains rustling, the electric hum of light pulsing in the dark. It all congregates to paint a portrait of a living space. I can picture the way my body would have to contort to get around some of the obstacles in this homestead. I can feel the texture of the floorboards beneath my feet. Dinner with the family. A discussion of planned summer projects. Counting cars is out. There aren't too many of them around here, you see. What about bug catching? You chill with your cousins for a bit, they offer you their bug kit and suggest a bit of plant husbandry as a side hustle, and then some weird blonde dude with a camera called Simon turned up and kind of stank up the vibes of the place a little, I'm not gonna lie. It's a guest house, he's a guest, maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know. I potted about a bit longer, sneaking outside for a little bit in a way that was clearly allowed but still felt a little bit devious, like I was stretching the boundaries of the house rules a little. The devil is in the details once again, the little things like how Boku, that's you, the little lad's name is Boku, how he takes his trainers on and off when he leaves the property. It all adds to the immersion. And then we have to talk about the sound design, all that incredible Foley work, the creak of the floorboards, the quiet roar of the ocean, the chirp of the cicadas, the squeak of your cousin's chair as they turn around to talk to you. If first impressions count for a lot, and they most certainly do, then this is, well, it's magnificent, and I'm somewhat gutted that I have to now leave it for the night. I will go to bed in the real world and dream of this place, imagining what quiet adventures await me in the morning. I met the girl from the boat again. She gives me a tour of her house, a baffling dichotomy of new age kitsch and quietly sad tradition, emblematic of the two halves of the world we are all living in, I guess, the desperate need to cling to the past and the primal urge to rocket forward into the future. Half of this house is eerily quiet, the other packed with music. She talks about her dad. The child I'm playing as is probably too young to understand the implication. She's cute. I'll hang out with her again. Today's my first day gallivanting around town proper, and I am introduced to the wonders of bug catching and fishing. A realization draws upon me. As I write this diary entry, I frantically Google the original release date for Animal Crossing. The correlation is eerie, both franchises developed at approximately the same time, but the vibes are, of course, entirely different. Alongside these fluttering critters and glistening sea creatures, two other moments stood out for me. A visit to the local clinic, meeting the physician and his nurse, a rather auspicious encounter, one that requires further scrutiny somewhere down the line. The other was this dilapidated shack just along the road from the guest house, a stark reminder that time makes fools of us all, almost heartbreaking to bear witness to on first approach. From the road it seems inviting, an old cavern of secrets, almost romantic in a peculiar way. And yet, once I entered the place, I could not help but be reminded that this was once someone's home, and now it is not. Still, there's some cats in there. That's cool. As the day drew to a close, following a sumptuous feast, and as an aside, look how luscious the illustration of this fridge is. Yeah, that's the good stuff right there. Following all that, I was reminded of my conversation with the cousins the previous night. The vines! My ward, the one on the right, it needs water. I turned on the hose, got absolutely drenched, and then kicked it over a spot and tried again. That should do it for the day. 2 days in, I already see the magic of this game. It's wildly compelling because it's so unremarkable. A celebration of the ordinary, of the joy that can be found in doing nothing. A childlike wonder at the power that comes from having no obligation to the world beyond staying safe and having fun. I love this. Bugs. We need 'em, but I can't help but be creeped out by the little buggers. It seems like I'm out of luck here, though, as once again I venture out into the world, this time the woods behind the guest house, and I find a daring new mechanic to engage with, luring beetles out of the tree with sugar water and capturing them for our own nefarious purposes, namely bug fights in the cousin's treehouse. It's quite the operation they've got here. I'm almost in awe of it. Much of what I did today was an expansion of yesterday's, seeing what was around every corner, down every dust road. One of the brilliant things about the town of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 is that doors are never taken for granted. Most buildings have multiple entrances, but each one leads you to a different path that sprawls outward and links up with spaces you wouldn't expect, which makes sense because that's how spaces in the real world work, right? I have in mind a recent encounter where I received someone else's package, and in delivering it to the rightful owner, I discovered what existed down a particular road I had gone past on the bus every day for the last 8 years. You have a mental map of how places exist in relation to one another, and there's a real treat in how Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 centers that idea as the crux of its experience. This came to the fore at one moment where In exploring the woods, venturing further and further along a dirt path, I was met with a gap in the trees whereby I could see all the way down to the boatyard, and two figures stood side by side. I didn't get to them in time. My uncle grabbed me for dinner, and by nightfall they were gone, but the experience stuck with me for the rest of the day. I went back to see Yasuko after hours. She had something profound and quietly sad to say once more. I tried to go and have a bath, but it was the ladies' turn today, so I guess I have to go to bed stinky. That's what you do as a kid anyway, isn't it? As a nearly 40-year-old man, the thought almost turns my stomach. This is a diary, of course, in which I write down the things that stand out the most to me about each day, but Boku also has a diary in which he's doing the very same thing, and this is an interesting bit of friction for me, because what happens when my points of interest are at odds with his? I'm curious what the metric is that the game uses to determine what the subject of these diary entries is. Today I spent some more time with Yasuko as she showed me around town a bit more. We stopped by some shrines, she lamented a waning friendship, and then I went about my way, spending the rest of the day hunting crayfish and pestering the good doctor and his nurse. Boku picked up on the key emotional hook. The fact that Yasuko had a friendship she held dearly that simply dissipated due to circumstances beyond her control. But what would have happened had I chosen not to follow her to the shrine first thing that morning and instead go about my merry way? This is the kind of thing that only gets answered with a second playthrough, so I put it to the back of my mind, choosing instead to become absorbed into the vibes once more. Something I really like about how the game presents dialogue is that classic JRPG thing of having you be the arbiter of your own narrative fate, exposition brought to you in truncated bursts by the friendly NPCs of this town. Everyone has at least one more thing to say, but it's up to you to take initiative to dig deeper. It's a brilliant setup, adding to this growing feeling that the game itself is a tug of war between player freedom and scripted moments. That dichotomy was brought to the fore by just how rapidly day seems to turn to night, how quickly you lose track of time as you hunt for beetles and nose around abandoned homes, how easily it seems to be to miss out on something because you chose to pursue something else. I know I have left narrative threads hanging, there just doesn't seem to be enough time. And yet, time for what? Time for seeing Yasuko, it seems, as this was the first day since I arrived that I didn't manage to actually talk to her. Lord knows I tried, but all sorts of nonsense got in the way. Nonsense like nearly drowning in the river thanks to a baffling minigame I uncovered by finally venturing into the water after skirting its edges for so long. But I survived. Obviously, thanks to the natural resilience of children. I'm reminded of that incredible webcomic about a 30-something sneezing and putting their back out while a child falls beneath the wheels of a car and then carries on playing football. Kind of morbid, if you think about it. The fanfare when you start running out of air is rather grotesque. No rising tempo or sense of panic like is found in the Sonic games. But then it's not a game over. It's your hapless uncle fishing you out of the water and letting you sleep off what would, in most circumstances, be a quite traumatizing event. I'm reminded also of a time in my own past where I met a boy on holiday and he tried to push my head underwater as I was struggling to swim to the edge of my grandfather's pool. I wonder how he's doing. I wonder if he's ever haunted by such a wicked act. I meet Yo in the graveyard, the boy who was once friends with Yasuko, and he's just really into rockets. Were this the modern era, I would suggest he takes a Radzar test, but as it stands, I leave him be, understanding that his demeanor and the circumstances of his place of residence suggest that there is more going on than is comfortable to examine just right now. I'm supposed to be naming the river here, which seems like an innocuous, even cute endeavor, but Boku is so small and the weight of such things is palpable. His aunt suggests he speaks to creepy Simon for advice. I go to his room, but he's not there. Then I make my way to Yasuko's house only to fall asleep the moment I lock eyes with her. Ah well, there's always tomorrow. A new guest enters the fray. A tall beanpole of a girl, fresh out of college and eager to get settled in. On what adventure? Who knows? An enigma, unknown even to your family members, who usually only see regulars come to stay. It's a peculiar thing, though. The moment she left my eyesight, she was nowhere to be found for the rest of the day. I think this must be a thing that Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 does, a friction at the heart of its design, that you can miss something, miss many things, simply by focusing on different paths. Maybe this time I missed the cue because I was too busy talking to Creepy Simon about nothing in particular. He was supposed to be helping me name the river. What happened to that? Time is precious here, except it doesn't really matter all that much because there's always tomorrow. Most of today was spent returning to now familiar locations in search of people, but I mostly found stray cats. I caught up with Yasuko and her sister Hikari at the baths. Hikari promised to take me to the secret beach tomorrow. I am genuinely excited. I can only hope I remember to meet her by the park first thing in the morning. I can only hope I'm not fed the enticing end of another thread at daybreak. Guess where that secret beach is? That's right, where I had already been and nearly drowned. Cheers, Hikari, it's not like I'm traumatized by that at all. Still, it was nice to spend some time with a new friend. Most of my interactions with Hikari up to this point were through her fortune-telling, and I didn't really have a clear grasp of who she was outside of that. Mostly because I was obsessed with her sister. What was nice about this morning venture, before Creepy Simon turned up to ruin the vibes and then I also nearly drowned again, was that I did get that sense of who Hikari was. An odd but extremely kind young girl who saw in others as well as in nature something worth respecting and treating well. Boku, being a snotty little boy, found little to resonate with, although under my watchful eye he has been keeping on top of watering the vine. That's an interesting dichotomy I find here. Who the game's narrative considers Boku to be versus the actions I am taking on his behalf. The name itself is a pun, Boku meaning me or my in Japanese. He is you and you are him. It reminds me a lot of that chaotic tug of war at the heart of Disco Elysium, how a player imprints part of themselves onto a somewhat defined character. At least Boku doesn't have a sentient Tai trying to kill him, that's something. The more I play Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, the more I find this disconnect between the things I want to engage with and the things the game is offering me. There's an abundance of things to collect. Bugs, fish, sweet treats from the cabinet bought with your hard-earned side hustle as a masseur. But there's also a frugality to its narrative that's weirdly stingy and, at the same time, oddly refreshing. Having been poisoned by the gluttony of modern video games, I've always chased the high of a game that's brave enough not to tell its story fully. The last time I experienced something like this was Turnfollow's excellent farming sim Before the Green Moon. This is really scratching that same itch. Guess who was a big boy and didn't drown today? This guy. I'm not really quite sure what I'm expected to be doing in this minigame. There's a bottle cap counter in the top corner which suggests some measure of scavenger hunt, but I'll be damned if I can see anything of interest anywhere below the waves. The vine is coming along nicely. I'm convinced that Takeshi and Shicheru have completely forgotten about this project. Probably because they're too busy being absolute lads, booting beetles out of trees, hunting down Yo's rocket parts, for some reason always eating dinner tops off. Honestly, I don't think there's ever been a better representation of the abstract idea of cousins, plural, ever committed to popular media. For the most of this first quarter of the game, I've consigned myself to a single enclosed circle of game space, one where the beauty is found in the offering of chance encounters. Or not, sometimes. The clinic was surprisingly empty today, not sure what that's all about. I'm more than happy with small game worlds to explore. The intimacy that is drawn from that constraint is unctuous to the point of gluttony. It's why I had a real soft spot for the Yakuza games before they started making too many of them and they started all being 100 hours long. So when a game like this decides to slip the thought of more game to come in the future, this time in the guise of one particularly burly uncle getting ready to repair a collapsed bridge I had assumed was little more than set dressing, the thought of a whole other area to explore is both thrilling and nauseating. My perfect loop of paradise torn into by a primal hunger for the outside. There's more to find here, more places to lose time to, and perhaps a wolfman in the mix if Uncle Genta's tall tales are anything to believe. At some point, I should probably talk about Aunt Mitsuko, a stoic and almost mythological figure that is a constant presence and yet a total enigma. But that's a conversation for another day, because I've got to hang out at Hikari's house this evening and... Oh, this is not...
おじいちゃんに年力を送ってたんだ。え、どんな年力？長生きしろ。長生きしろ。いつまでも達者で幸せに暮らしてくださいってね。はあ、私ってこんなことでしか恩返しできないのかな。どうしたの？
Oh, okay, it's fine. He's not sick. He's just haunted by the prospect of forgetting his late wife's smile. That's okay. We all get like that from time to time. Anyway, on to more pressing things, like the fact that Uncle Genta has fixed the bridge. Hooray! I say fixed, he's just knocked a big pole down. Beginning to think this dude is a massive chancer. Maybe I should stop listening to his advice. Me and the lads decide to go explore the other side of the river, in the process finding an enclave of new bugs to collect, and one of Yo's crashed rockets. I will later return the valve to him and listen to a quite sad story, but for now it's back to proceedings. I finally find a bottle cap underwater. It gives a little fanfare and slightly increases my ability to hold my breath. Kind of interesting risk-reward cycle going on here. Not sure how I feel about collectibles given how uninterested in being a checklist the rest of the game is, but it's a welcome diversion from the general ennui of the day. Yasuko comments how she wishes more divers came to town as it would help revitalize the area. I just feel it would increase the odds of fishing my ass out of the ocean before I end up killing myself hunting these bloody bottle caps. It was nice to explore another area. Much of my concerns dissipated when I realised that this was simply more game to play, and given that we are only a third of the way through the month, that slow drip of new places to engage with is a welcome palate cleanser. There are even spaces here that I can't get at still, so maybe more fun to be had on the horizon. Having said that, while seeking out college girl Yoshika, I found a whole section of the guest house I hadn't ventured anywhere near. There was a moment, staring out a window into the peaceful night air, that I felt truly at ease. Mostly because Creepy Simon had decided to take the night off, it seems. There is so much about the world we don't understand. Today I chanced upon a boat I could not interact with, a budding friendship between Yoshika and Creepy Simon, and an introduction to a new, mysterious girl who appeared in the clinic as the sun was starting to set. She wouldn't give me her name, only telling me that she had a problem with her heart. A strange coincidence, given that Yasuko had mentioned that her grandmother had died of cardiac complications, the reason behind Gramps' sudden bout of melancholy. I asked him about the girl. He feigned ignorance, and all at once the nagging doubt I had on our initial encounter had been realized fully. I don't even want to say it out loud. It's so obvious. Bordering on cliché, the impact of such revelation was still mesmerizing. Unless, of course, Gramps is just messing with me. Today has been a day of understanding that there's more to the people of this town than meets the eye. College girl has something of a mysterious air to her, as amused by Creepy Simon, although to me it seems like she's just enjoying her very own brat summer. It's Hikari I've started to wonder about the most, though. Why is it that she's always sat in the playground on her own, but never interacting with any of the equipment therein? Is it just the lack of other kids in the town other than the two smelly boys from the guest house, or is there something else going on here? There's an ongoing, unspoken conversation about decay within the world of Boku no Natsuyasumi. Communities in decline, grief's encroaching shadow hanging over what would otherwise be moments of serenity. A bittersweet cascade that risks drowning out the sound of a beating heart. No one here seems particularly sad, but it all feels a bit lost somehow, like the world left these people behind. I should get back to bug collecting tomorrow.
僕くん、こんばんは。こんばんは、お姉ちゃん。
ねえ、なんで一人で夜中にブランコなんかに乗ってるの？
昔よくお父さんとこの公園に来て二人で星を見てたんだ。
I lasted all of half a day larking about inspecting my bug collection and playing on the swings and the like before the allure of these weird over-projecting adults became too much. But before then, I do have to note that I really like the organic path dug into the side of the hill by the swings, the one right next to the steps. That's such a characterful little touch, I couldn't help but be charmed by it. I talked to the girl who may or may not be a ghost about Gramps' melancholy, getting no further to the truth about what it is that's going on with that man beyond a deep-seated grief that engorges the knots of his heart.
そういうものなのかって。
I feel like maybe I was too harsh on Creepy Simon, who it turns out is just really into surfing and photography. Even when spending time with Yoshiko, he has no qualms about answering questions honestly and with zeal. He's just a chill dude after all this, and it's my own cultural biases that have led me to name him such a rotten title. Another exciting bit of gossip I learned today is that Shichiru has a bit of a crush on Hikari, which is interesting because I never see them together. Isn't that always the way? You admire the idea of a person from afar. Hikari's solemn, hermetic existence, her mystical powers of clairvoyance, these things must be so enticing for a young boy who doesn't quite have the words to express what he wants from the world. Especially when there's a slightly obnoxious older brother in the mix, one who will not put a shirt on at dinner time, ever. Like, come on, dude, I know summers in Japan are unbearably hot and humid, but we don't need a gun show every single night.
こんな夜中になんだか変なこと思い出しちゃったよ。
A new, mysterious woman has entered the fray. Shizue, having arrived rather unceremoniously by boat at midday, I only caught sight of her by chance at the day's end, staring longingly at the sea from the first floor balcony. She's referred to as Auntie Shizue, although how much of an auntie she really is will be up for debate. A close family friend, a neighbor, an actual family member, someone who went away and is returning to town for the Obon Matsuri, which starts tomorrow. Also, starts tomorrow IRL. How about that? She says something strange to Boku on their first encounter. Let's get along while we have the chance. And why wouldn't they get along? Boku's the most amicable young boy ever committed to a piece of literary fiction, and even at those times when he's a bit more blunt, no shade has ever come from it. An odd way to introduce oneself to a child. However, this, coupled with a strange utterance from the boys about how she used to breastfeed them, suggests to me that there's something else going on with this woman. As Simon would say, she has something of a mysterious air to her. Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 continues to surprise me.
はい、チーズ。
The Shizue mystery is compounded even further by the revelation that she is Yasuko and Hikari's mother. A mother who has a family of her own. A mother who clearly has quite a difficult relationship with the idea of family. I think a lot of these folk are just really lonely deep down, but don't really know how to invite intimacy into their lives. There is some manner of projection going on here. Yoshika asks Boku to share a bed with her. It's not clear if this is some cultural misunderstanding on my part or her not behaving appropriately. Part of me wishes to avoid her for the rest of the summer. Another part understands that she is probably just restless and having a laugh. The big event of August 13th, beyond it being the start of the Matsuri and the news that a monk is coming to visit tomorrow, is that Boku finally managed to convince Yo to speak to Yasuko. It's a strange encounter. Going well, I thought, until Yasuko yells at Boku, convinced that he doesn't understand the gravity of what he's done. But that's who you want helping to patch up the cracks, isn't it? Someone not yet burdened by the cynicism of the world. Someone who can see something as simple and beautiful as a friendship for what it is. There's a remarkable amount of restraint going on into the writing of this game, drip-feeding you morsels of poignant exposition at times where they feel they're most ergodic, I guess. You bring what you know about the world into a game like this. The game's creators understood this implicitly. Obon is a celebration of those no longer with us, a time for reflection and for honouring the dead. A monk has come to town to aid in this remembrance. He's brought fireworks with him. Today was a continuation of two particular narrative chains that ended up intersecting in a strangely frictional way. The first, of the mysterious sick girl at the clinic, revealed to us an answer we already knew, not spoken out loud of course, but in a quiet interaction between two kindred spirits, interrupted of course by this snotty little kid cocking his head in perplexity at the complicated lives of the adults around him. Gramps seems in higher spirits after this though, so maybe in some twisted way this is an annual tradition for him, falling back into the past to chase the blues away.
ねえおじいちゃんあまり悲しまないで
The second, of the exact nature of Shizue's relationship with Yasuko and Hikari, is made way more explicit in blunt utterances and echoing absences. What is this woman's deal? Why has she created a gulf between her and her daughter so voluminous that she has to excuse herself from her late husband's grave at a time when reverence is expected, if not demanded? Yasuko says she's only here to visit Hikari, and yet she's been standing on that balcony all day. She calls herself a seeker of justice. She understands implicitly the irony of such a claim.
どういうこと？
I wish these people were more like Simon. All he wants is beautiful sunsets and tasty waves. Another burning question answered today. For the entire time I've been in this town, I've been wondering what's been going on in that abandoned shack above the harbour. It's host to the town's stray cat population, littered with food throughout, and yet every time I go in there I find no evidence that anyone has been there in years. And yet, for a game in which all things have a purpose, no matter how mundane, I remained convinced that something was going on. Some mysterious benefactors under the cloak of darkness ensure such vulnerable creatures remain safe and fed. It's Hikari. Of course it is. Who else would it be? Uncle Genta? Pfft. Once again I am bowled over by the matter-of-factness of such revelations. But, of course, such a framework makes perfect sense. This isn't some grand conspiracy. It's a young girl showing compassion to the small things of the world. Maybe I'm being too harsh on her mother. Although, Lord help me, Shizue is not making things easy for me. With one more mystery down and a full half of the summer holidays left, we need something to continue to whet the appetite. A new mystery unearthed this very evening. Someone has taken 100 yen out of the ledger. All eyes are primed on Takeshi, the proverbial naughty boy of the community, and yet I'm far from convinced that it's him. For one, he's spent most of the day with his brother staring directly at the sun. It's hard for me to imagine him having the chops to commit a bit of graceful larceny without getting caught. For two, it's way more interesting if it was taken by one of the guests. We'll see if this amounts to anything, or if the game is brave enough to let such a frayed doubt linger. Oh, also, I think the mysterious sick girl who's definitely Gramps' dead wife will be gone by tomorrow, and I'm already quite torn up about that. It turns out Shizue's already off today too, in her typically unceremonious fashion. We have one last conversation about how she loves the sea but hates this town in particular. I learn from College Girl that she and Yasuko both live in Tokyo during term time. There's some parallels there, I think. Close proximity is no guarantee of interaction. Yasuko later confides that not once did Shizue speak to her during this visit, something that angers me somewhat. I can understand the whole situation with Yo because they're both young and a bit stupid when it comes to these uncrossable chasms, but a grown woman should know better, should make the effort. There shouldn't be any animosity there, even if there can't be any love. Gramps is being a bit of a bummer today too, banging on about how his grandkids will eventually move on, and then at some point their only interactions will be when they come to visit his grave. We seriously need to get this man a girlfriend or something, because there's feeling blue and then there's whatever this self-indulgent woe is me bullcrap is. I am running out of sympathy for the adults of this town because they all seem so idiotic half the time. Still, there's the excitement of new hatchlings in the ocean imminently. I went for a swim earlier, managing to not nearly drown as often now. I hope that brings some measure of peace to my aunt and uncle. One of the things I really like about this game is that it so very rarely is explicit in directing you. More often than not, you're free to bugger about to your heart's content. What ends up steering you to the game's countless fascinating narrative interactions is your own curiosity and the relationships you build with its cast. Adding to this is the brilliant way in which Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 likes to drop specific characters in unassuming places, catching you off guard and making you think, well, I have to drop everything and see what this person's up to, don't I? Today it was all about Uncle Genta. Well, Uncle Genta and the dead animal that was unearthed in the forest by Yasuko and Hikari's faithful hound. I'm not really sure what to make of that beyond another strange narrative beat to add to a story full of them. Genta's hiding something. Well, he's not hiding anything per se, it's just that he's being very sheepish and refusing to answer Boku's quite reasonable questions. I'm in two minds about what this could possibly mean, but the man is certainly carrying something that burdens him. I hope it's not burdening Aunt Mitsuko. I had a strange encounter with Yasuko this evening. She's repeating a dialogue I've already heard from the day before. I'm unsure if this is a limitation of the game's scope or making a wider point about how much her mother's neglect is bothering her. It remains impactful either way. There are two people I've been somewhat neglectful of during my stay here. The first is fairly obvious, the most important lady of them all, dear, sweet, contemplative Aunt Mitsuko. She who brings the meals, who ensures that Boku gets to bed in a timely fashion, who doesn't get too upset when her reckless husband is doing something stupid or her horrible children forget her birthday. It's her birthday today, by the way. Thanks for reminding us all, Uncle Genta. The second person I don't think I've even properly talked about before. Nagisa, the clinic's nurse, is a real enigma, but not in the I've done something rotten way. More like she is a woman who has her own life and it's not really anyone's business but hers. She doesn't stay on the island after hours. There was some talk about her going out with the ferry captain, but I don't know if that was just baseless gossip or not. She's happy to dole out health advice whenever you want, and out of all of the adults I've engaged with throughout my summer vacations, she seems to be the least problematic. Not including Aunt Mitsuko, of course, who is an angel. I'm starting to see a bit more repetition in dialogue the more I venture, and I think a lot of it comes down to visiting the same folks time and time again. I don't think this game was necessarily designed for someone like me who develops intense parasocial hyperfixations. You're supposed to engage with more than just the same three people time and time again, and do some bug hunting and fishing, which I've been sorely neglecting. Yasuko's made plans to go see Yo tomorrow. I might tag along to be an uncomfortable third wheel to that reunion. Maybe. We'll see what Hikari's origami fortune teller thinks in the morning. My morning glory vine has already started to wither. It's interesting that it couldn't even keep up for the whole month. But then again, a month is a long time, isn't it? Day in, day out with the same people, the same ideas circulating ad nauseum. As I close in on 2/3 of this game complete, I can't help but worry about what it is that's going to take me to the finish line and the journey back home. There are mysteries remaining, in particular the slow, reluctant ebb of information about Uncle Genta provides me a motivating pursuit during the day. Not to mention this odd friendship between Yosuke and Simon that doesn't seem to be blossoming into anything particular. I think Simon's just really into photography, and I think Yosuke is just really into the platonic ideal of love. Both viewing the world as something to be framed, not delusional per se, but rather a curated bastion of the concept of another person at the heart of their respective worldviews. Yasuko and Yo's second encounter went well, even if it was marred slightly by Boku buggering about nearby. They were open and honest about how they felt about the rift that grew between them, a chasm born of encroaching paranoia and building a structure of reality in your own head. I feel like most instances of falling out come under this category, a tragic miscommunication left to manifest into something paradoxically real. How do you make peace with so much lost time? It was boys' night in the bath tonight, Boku and the cousins enjoying a relaxing soak in silence, as it should be. An earthquake hit the town overnight. I went out on a trek to find out if anything had changed. The answer was, rather disappointingly, not much. But then again, this is a country that is used to this natural phenomenon, and it was an event so unremarkable, apparently, that Uncle Genta slept right through it. What I did find interesting about my day, in which nothing much happened, bar a slightly aggro encounter with Yoshika that was, in all fairness, mostly Boku's fault for being a nosy brat, was that it gave me time to appreciate the layout of the town and how well each frame slotted together. There's a brilliant sense of continuity to be found as you navigate, and even then the game finds ways to surprise you. Like today, for instance, I realised that you can swim to Yo's house directly from the harbour. And of course you can, because all the information is right there. But I was so used to this one specific route I always took to go and see him that I'd never clocked that this was an option. Which makes me wonder, because Yo's house is inaccessible to Boku at night, maybe this is a workaround? I've not attempted a swim after dinner. I suspect one of the boring, responsible grown-ups would stop me, especially after my multiple drowning escapades. Definitely something to test out tomorrow night. Oh, and the earthquake did uncover a mine shaft, and although blindingly curious about this, it does look incredibly dangerous. A little bit of housekeeping before this diary entry begins properly. I did try to walk into the ocean in order to swim to Yo's house at night, but it just wasn't having any of it. It makes sense from a scope creep perspective and also a ludonarrative one. You can't let a little boy swim around at night. Are you daft? I also tried to get into the mine, but the boys were blocking the way. It seems like they're planning to sneak in at some point tomorrow. I'll have to keep an eye on this event. So, the big news. We've got a new guy in town, Taniguchi, a mysterious, stoic figure who keeps to himself. We overhear a phone conversation Yoshika is having that probably pertains to him. This ends up being something of a revelation, as her true purpose in town might be starting to be revealed here. It's interesting how this has ended up manifesting. A stranger appears, and it's those we already know who become more mysterious for it. The thing with Taniguchi is, although he's a man of few words the first time you encounter him, when you do eventually start chatting, he's not completely averse to sharing something of himself. Perhaps Boku's inquisitive nature coupled with his childlike naivete is enough to breach the seal of even the most battle-hardened of men. Perhaps Taniguchi is not all he's made out to be, even if Yoshika does warn us against hanging out with him. You will never guess in a million years what happened when the boys went to explore that abandoned mine shaft. Today was absolutely packed with goings-on. Takeshi being a stupid boy and having to be rescued, Yasuko and Yo being completely inconspicuous and spending all their time together under the pretense of tutoring. There's a car in the ocean. When did that happen? Looking back at the footage I accrued over the past few days, I hadn't even noticed that the vehicle that was once parked precariously near the shrine was no longer there. The earthquake having dumped it unceremoniously into Poseidon's domain, that was a fun thing to discover. When you're playing a game that's ostensibly about nothing in particular, especially one where you're likely spending a dozen or so hours revisiting the same places over and over again, it's little things like these that really rejuvenate the whole experience. I think there's something to be said about this model of narrative design. There's never anything overly verbose, nothing melodramatic. There are those kernels of mystery, of course, like what's going on with Yoshika and Taniguchi, and the mild peril of Takeshi's accident. But more often than not, the game is mostly concerned with these blissfully mundane conversations each character has with you. Aunt Mitsuko chatting excitedly about jellyfish? That, to me, is more engaging than any of the big story beats in more traditional blockbusters. Learning about Uncle Genta's fear of heights is a more fulfilling revelation to me than, well, you get the picture. And outside of those mild, calm story beats, you also have the impact of the environment on all this. While checking in on Gramps this evening, I was greeted with the fact that the door to Yasuko's area of the house was now unlocked. That big psychological wedge between the family, a rift caused largely due to Yasuko and Hikari's mother leaving, taking the key to that door with her, that's now gone. What could that possibly mean? Hi folks, just a little bit of context for the remainder of this video. I realised perhaps a little too late that it wasn't my brightest idea to make this kind of project when I had a fairly gargantuan life event on the horizon. As it transpires, that event is happening on the 29th, 3 days before the planned conclusion to all this, and I could not figure out a way to make it work as intended. So just know that for the following 6 days worth of entries, these were played and written only 12 hours apart rather than the usual 24, and my time with the game will have come to an end on the 28th of August. I doubt it will have impacted my experience of Boku no Natsu Yasumi 2 all that much, but I just wanted to be transparent about this. Today was all about diving, an activity I'm finding myself increasingly endeared by. Part of this was down to finally being able to explore the mineshaft, safely this time, mind you. Once again, I was party to the blissful joy of discovering a place in relation to another place, and also this weird reversal of the traditional "there's secrets behind the waterfall" trope. This time, there was a waterfall behind the secret. The waters around town are really interestingly designed. That initial reaction to a whole lot of nothing, it turns out, was the intended effect. What you see under the waves changes over time and with the context of what you're supposed to be looking for. The bottle caps, as it turns out, are a red herring for the experience of stumbling upon something interesting at the bottom. A sunken ship, for example. Also, a lot of fridges and tyres. Why are people like this? Taniguchi's presence here, a former diver reluctant to talk about the reason for his stay, although more than happy to chat about his ailing mother, rings alarm bells, especially given the conversations we overhear Yoshika having with someone who may or may not be her boss. Is she a cop? Is Taniguchi some criminal mastermind in hiding? Is this all connected to the lunchbox full of gold bullion Boku finds in the mineshaft? This is all getting a bit No Country for Old Men, and I'm not sure if I like that. And now there's another guy. At this rate, by the end of the week we'll have a new one every 17 seconds. Yasuda is the name that rings a bell, one uttered by Yoshika during one of her suspect phone calls, a painfully unsubtle partner in crime, whichever side of the law those two are on. There is no room at the inn, so he's taken up residence in a tent by the pier. Boku decides that they are best friends, and so starts their relationship with an incredibly personal question. He's such a funny kid. Aunt Mitsuko asks you to warn him about being too close to the tide, but there's no option to do so. This isn't a game with dialogue choices for the most part. It's that wavering conflict between the player and the character again. Who's the one making the decisions, really? I tell Boku where to go, but he's the one driving the plot along. I seek out narrative spokes, he decides what to do with them. It would be a cognitive tug-of-war for most characters of this persuasion, but there's something about his age and the expectations of who kids are that gives me pause to criticise. This won't necessarily be intentional, in the sense that the developers might not have omitted dialogue trees for any reason other than that beloved scope creep, but I don't feel like the game is missing anything for being this way. The downside of all this narrative frugality? There's only a week left and still so many questions I have. Nothing special happened today, but I still think it was a wonderful day. These were the words in Boku's diary at the culmination of today's adventures, and to a certain degree those words ring true, but it's mostly due to the decisions I made on his behalf.
There was some little bastard boy behaviour right off the bat as Boku reveals to Yoshika that Yasuda, her co-worker or co-conspirator or whoever he is, has a crush on her. It's still not clear what the deal is with those two, or Taniguchi for that matter, who I had a single, unremarkable encounter in the baths with that evening. My downfall in all these proceedings, of course, was that classic parasocial attachment to those I was already intimately familiar with. I wanted to check in on the people I knew all had things going on, in that peculiar way that you make decisions in the real world about who's important to you. You take the call you know will be difficult because it matters to the person on the other end of the line, or conversely, you opt out of spending time with someone who brings you joy because it's at odds with something you feel honour bound to pursue. In the case of August 25th, I missed out on what looked like a critical moment on the harbour between Yasuda and Yoshika because I was checking in on Gramps, which I think was worth it as I got a little history lesson about the town and a sense of relief that Gramps seems to be doing better now. I'm glad. He's a fictional character in a digital game. He's still drawn an emotional response from me. That's power. Having said that, I did utter an expletive when I reached the harbour, mere steps from engaging with a new narrative beat, and immediately started nodding off. Does your body not produce its own adrenaline, Boku? Is this little slice of drama not sufficiently enticing enough to keep you awake for 3 more minutes? I'm sure I'll pick up this thread in the morning. I'm beginning to think that there isn't going to be anything else to do in the area unlocked by Genta fixing the bridge. Each time I go there I return empty-handed. No skits, no items to find, certainly no Wolfman in the mix. I'm driven mad by the fact that there does seem to be a part of that area I can't get to. I'm wondering if I just missed the trigger point for it. I don't want to look up stuff in a guide for this, my first time with the game. Also, I suspect given that there are only 5 days left, chances are whatever could have been done at the window has long passed. I'm feeling restless. The summer is coming to a close. I never really bothered catching bugs or engaging with the beetle fights. I'm no closer to understanding Hikari or Yoshika. While I do find comfort in the blossoming reunion of Yasuko and Yo, it is a bliss tainted by the knowledge that they will swiftly part once more. I never did learn what the deal was with Yo's father. Although in writing this it occurred to me that maybe he is the Wolfman that Shigeru and Takeshi were talking about several weeks ago. 5 days remain until Boku has to return home. There's a rocket launch planned tomorrow morning. I hope it goes well. We could all do with something to bring us all together.
ねえ、はっきり感想を言っていい？あんた最高ね。
I'm not gonna lie, if someone said this to me, I'd die happy.
え？もうドキドキして死ぬかと思ったよ。
Yo's rocket launch was another unsuccessful attempt to fire straight up, as evidenced in this incredibly crunchy, compressed cutscene. That might be an emulator issue. I'm not sure how it looked on the original hardware. Everyone's a bit despondent about the outcome of this one, especially considering how long it took to get here. Yasuko, however, seems surprisingly sanguine. The launch apparently ignited a fire within her that she thought had forever been extinguished by the melancholy of her general situation. That's so clearly young love formulating. It's a joy to bear witness to. In other news, it seems like the Yasuda, Yoshika, Taniguchi situation might be drawing to a conclusion tomorrow. I could not for the life of me find Taniguchi today, although in hindsight he might have been in the mines searching for that cache of gold bars that Boku found and for some reason decided not to tell anyone about. It's not even hidden. I'm surprised Uncle Genta hadn't stumbled upon it. As the sun sets, Simon tells me an anecdote that might just be the best piece of writing I've experienced in this game. A thoughtful, poetic reckoning with the universe. He is not the man I first thought he was. I'm more than happy to be wrong.
あと50億年ぐらい生きてられたら本当の太陽の葬式が見られるんだろうけど、でもその頃あのポルトガルの鐘はまだあるのかな。
今日は残念だったね。
Yasuko and Yo talk about the future. A future I won't be witness to, painfully aware that my time with this game is coming to a close. Yo, crestfallen this morning, seems more resolved than ever. His passion brings me some measure of peace about the challenges in my own life. Do the thing, even if it's overly ambitious, even if it seems impossible. You don't know what things you will live to regret if you don't.
どこを受けるの？
教えない。
意外に意地悪なんだ。
ねえ、谷口のおじさん見なかった？
Listen, I don't have a lot to say about what happened today, because I missed a hell of a lot of it.
だったらいいんだけど。
This is the gamble when going into a game like this blind and making assumptions based on your very specific set of experiences leading up to that point. Yasuda and Yoshika got their man. Taniguchi, arrested, unceremoniously marched off onto the boat without so much as an explanation. And with that, all three of them gone. Honestly, I'm kind of blindsided by this. I really felt like I'd have one last conversation with the guy, maybe catch him in the act trying to grab the gold at the bottom of the mineshaft, but he wasn't there. I spent an entire day on a wild goose chase and it feels incredibly unsatisfying. But at the same time, I can't help but respect Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 for doing this. I'm sure there is a sequence of actions you can take to unlock a more substantial narrative denouement. Much was the case with the original PS1 game, as espoused by Mr. Rogers in his extensive video. These games are built around the choices the player makes, and the extent to which those choices have tangible outcomes will inevitably become hit or miss as a result. Part of me thinks about giving all of this another go next year, this time with a guide in hand to get the most out of each day. Another part of me cherishes the fact that this game allowed me to immerse myself in the experience of being a child, an experience that is intrinsically defined by how little context we have for the world around us at that age. To only have a fragment of a story, especially in the light of what was apparently a manhunt for a serious criminal, makes perfect sense to me. And my choices within the game allowed me to come to that fragmented conclusion. It's kind of perfect.
そうじゃ。この場所で生まれたのじゃ。
I've given up on trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be going to find the Wolfman's charcoal hut. Maybe I'm being stupid. Maybe seasoned Boku no Natsuyasumi players watching this are screaming at me right now. I'll have to try again next year. There's plenty of other things going on right now. Like Simon and Nagisa getting engaged. Where the hell did that spring from? Simon's stoicism and Nagisa's guarded nature couple nicely, but still it was a shock to the system given that up until that point I had never seen them together. Maybe that's why she was always in the park in the evening, around the same time and the same area he would be taking pictures of the setting sun. After dinner, a phone call is awaiting Boku. My heart sinks into my stomach hearing this, despite the smirk on Uncle Genta's face. I've not mentioned at all during these diaries, but the reason Boku is staying with his aunt and uncle this summer is that his own mother is heavily pregnant. Earlier in the day, Gramps mentions that he had heard she was due any day now, but the call coming from Boku's dad that evening gave me cause to panic. But it's fine. It's a cause for celebration even. Boku has a new baby brother. Everyone is ecstatic. He doesn't really know how to feel. A mixture of elation and uncertainty about his new place in the world. He was just a boy. Now he's an older brother. I try to remember what that experience was like for me, but my baby brother is now 35 and I can only see him as the adult he has become. Simon offers up some photos of the morning glories Boku and, by extension, I had been taken care of this summer. The photos bring me to tears. There is one more day left. But in a way, there are no more days left. A farewell tour, misty eyes and unending heartbreak as we say our goodbyes. This would not have any impact were it not for the strength of so many aspects of this game. Its writing, its setting, its cast, the unusual plodding nature of things, taking the whole experience as it comes and daring not to fret about all the things you missed along the way. I have no more thoughts to give.
大人になったの？
What else is there even to say?
せいぜい1ヶ月分だけどね。
学士。
嘘嘘。見違えるほどにたくましくなったよ。あああ。水の匂いが眩しい通りに雨に疲れた人が行き交う雨上がりの街に風が不意に起こる流れる営みを僕は見てる僕は見てる
ねえ、それなんて人の歌なの？
え？ハッピーエンド。
There's a thought that only popped into my head as I said my farewells to this weird, wonderful game. As we boarded the Shiodate ferry to the mainland, it occurred to me that in a peculiar way this boat was a central figure in the journey of Boku no Natsu Yasumi 2. A sort of checkpoint for the day's events, but also a constant reminder of the fact that this summer vacation wasn't some fleeting moment of fancy, but rather an experience of living amongst other people. This is not a dream. This is not some fantasy world that vanishes the moment the pressing need to grow up rears its ugly head. It's a little town called Fumi, and it's only a 40-minute ferry ride away. As my time with the game finally came to a close, I felt at the same time a bursting sensation of gratitude and also a gnawing loss. What do I do now? A stupid remark, given that I am writing this on the eve of an incredibly involved life event. By the way, this probably won't come out on September the 1st as I originally planned, but it doesn't really matter. The experience itself is timeless.
見えた。まっすぐ飛んでる。やったー。
What we know about the world comes down to what the world is willing to share with us. But in this modern era, when the traditional barriers of time and space are no longer a concern, it has never been easier to learn more, to approach a wider understanding of the way of things. Boku no Natsu Yasumi 2 is a game that is so heavily entrenched in the background of its creators that it's been utterly mesmerizing to an outsider like myself. A game about a very specific cultural space and time. That juxtaposition between the universal language of family, love, longing and regret, and the more specific tonal, idiomatic and cultural elements is a lesson everyone can learn, that our understanding of others and the world around us is never more than a few conversations away, even if sometimes we have to read between the lines. I am reluctant to make any grand proclamations about my time with Boku no Natsu Yasumi 2, while it's still fresh in my mind. You need space and time to digest works like these. I'll never truly know its impact until it pops into my mind randomly 5 years from now. I'll never be sure whether I can even call it a masterpiece until it's too late not to say it. This is understandably a cult favourite. This is, by design, an incredibly precise and specific work of art. It has provoked an emotional response in me. It has allowed me to reconvene my understanding of what it is about games that I truly cherish, that they can be vessels for storytelling, that the act of telling the story is itself holistic, not just about events or characters or the spaces in which they reside, but everything. If you've made it this far, I hope you found something to take away from this experience and the way that I have shared it with you all. In an online culture where the conversation moves by with such startling pace, sometimes it's good to take a step back and think about how much we risk leaving behind if we think of the past as just the past. A massive thank you to the people at Hilltop Works for their unwavering efforts to get this game before the eyes of an English-speaking audience. Fan translation is one of the truly unsung heroes of the universal language of art, and especially at a time when so much localization is being shipped off to LLMs to save costs, the fact that a group painstakingly took what is a quite expansive script and brought it across the ocean is nothing short of miraculous. Thank you also to Millennium Kitchen for creating something with such passion and love. I would say that they don't make them like this anymore, but the studio did release quite a few of these in the last few years. They are, as I understand it, quite good. I think the appetite for games like this has only increased as the years go by. A brilliant experience, whichever way you put it. I'm incredibly grateful to have been able to participate in it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next summer.
今後も楽しい旅のお手伝い、塩立汽船をよろしくお願いいたします。